share. Okay. Does everybody see the screen? Okay, great. Okay, so I want to start out today by talking a little bit more about the biography of Rav Kook, and then we'll segue from there into the topic for this evening. And it happens serendipitously to be a very, I didn't plan it this way, but you can think I did, that the biographical aspect that I want to share with you tonight is very much related to the theme that I want to discuss. It's actually not night. Well, I don't know where everybody is, but evening here. Okay, so Rav Kook moved to Israel, or the land of Israel. wasn't in Israel back then, in 1904, and he became the rabbi of the town of Yafo. There was no Tel Aviv. I mentioned that before. And his responsibility was not just for as the chief rabbi of Yafo, but he also was the chief rabbi of the agricultural settlements that had been recently established going up the coastline of the land of Israel up into the Galilee. Now, when we say that Rabbi Kook was the rabbi of those new settlements, these kibbutzim that have been established, it's sort of an internal contradiction, because the vast majority of these pioneers were not observant Jews. And as a matter of fact, many of them were pretty hostile to traditional Judaism. And Rav Kook saw himself as a bridge figure, as somebody who came from the old world, who lived the life of a very pious old world Eastern European Jew, great Torah scholar, meticulous observance of Jewish tradition. And at the same time, because of his ability to see the world through very different cognitive lenses, we'll use our terminology here, he was able to see the non-religious and even anti-religious pioneers in a remarkably affirmative and affirming way. And so he saw himself as a personality that could bridge the old world and the new world. One of their most remarkable episodes is something he did when he'd been already in the land of Israel for 9 years, 1913. So he came in 1904. In 1913, he wanted to reach out to his rabbinic colleagues, mostly from Jerusalem, and help them to see these non-religious pioneers through his eyes. He wanted to do cognitive therapy on them of sorts, to empower them to be able to see the nobility of their souls. So he reached out to these rabbis, and he was a colleague of theirs and respected. And though later on, when he became the chief rabbi of Israel under the British Mandate, there was a lot of hostility between the old world rabbis and him, precisely because of his very fresh way of perceiving the pioneers. So he reached out to his colleagues, mostly from Jerusalem, and he said, "Come with me. Let's spend a month traveling from one kibbutz to another, reaching out to these non-religious and even anti-religious pioneers and building a bridge between them, between the old world and the new world." So I have a photograph here, which you can see, which is from that trip that he took in 1913. Now, when you look at this picture, which is quite a picture, so I'll bet it's hard to tell who the rabbis are and who the secular pioneers are. I know that's like a big mystery, right, Omid? Right. So this is black and white here. Right. So this is Rabbi Kook, right? And these are other well-known rabbis of the time. Okay. And these are the pioneers with their shovels and pickaxes, etc. Right. This was not staged. Right. This is not, sometimes you go to these places where you can dress up like people did 100 years ago, put on costumes, take a family picture. That's not what this is. Okay. So I want to relate to you a story that happened in one of the stops on this trip. So one of the places he went to was a kibbutz called Poria. Poria. Hi, Andy. And this is a picture that I was able to find of kibbutz Poria, but from 1940. Now, this trip was in 1913. So this is how in 1940 kibbutz Poria looked. You can imagine what it looked like in 1913. It was quite a bit more rustic than rustic. In 1940, it looks pretty primitive. In 1913, it must have looked like a place that this is not Club Med. Okay, this is a place of backbreaking labor and self-sacrifice to build up the land of Israel. So Rabbi Kook and his rabbinic colleagues come to Kibbutz Poria. By the way, it's near, I don't know if that name rings a bell, because Poria exists still. I don't think it's a kibbutz anymore. I'm not sure about that. I think it's a little town, and it's above Tiberias, above the Sea of Galilee. It is a hospital there. Now, they arrive at this kibbutz, and it happened to be mealtime. So the chalutzim, these pioneers, are having a meal. It was probably glatt, not kosher, right? The meal they were having. And Rabbi Kook and his colleagues had brought their own food with them. And so they were eating outside, and these pioneers, there was a tent, they were eating inside the tent. Maybe it looks something like the tent over here. And then Rabbi Kook said, Rabbi Isai, my masters, we came here to be with them. We're out here eating our kosher food. They're inside there eating their non-kosher food. This is not why we came. They finished quickly eating, and then the rabbis went into the same tent where the secular pioneers were located. And Rabbi Kook reached out, and he said that they've come in order to not influence, but to be influenced, to be inspired by the self-sacrifice and dedication and high idealism of the pioneers. I'm not sure Rabbi Kook was speaking on behalf of all the other rabbis in that statement, but that's what Rabbi Kook said. And Rabbi Kook then said, let's dance. And Rabbi Kook starts to sing a song, and all these pioneers who'd grown up religious, they knew all the religious songs. They'd grown up that way. They sang a song, V'tahir libenu li'ovdecha bemet, asking God to purify our hearts to serve you in truth. And they start to dance. And the pioneers like the kind of stereotype, the mythic stereotype of working all day in the fields and dancing all night. The hora. There's actually a little bit of truth to that. And they're all dancing in a circle. And at a certain point in the dancing, singing, Rabbi Kook exits the tent and he goes out, and there was a shomer. Now, unfortunately, the hostility between Jews in the land of Israel and the Arabs goes back, wasn't just a few months ago. And so Jews organized self-defense squads, and they were called Shomrim, the guards. You may have seen pictures of these Jewish guards that would guard these communities. They actually dressed like Arabs, not to be in disguise, it's just whatever. I guess they thought it was cool. They would ride on horses and had these things, the bullets, like across their chest like this, big old rifle. And so Rabbi Kook goes outside and he goes up to a shomer and he says, "Don't ask any questions, just change clothes with me." So the shomer puts on Rabbi Kook's clothes. This is a true story. And Rabbi Kook puts on the clothes of a shomer. And Rabbi Kook goes back into the circle of dancing. And the dancing stops because everybody looks and they see Rav Kook, who looks like this. Usually, he didn't have much choice in colors. It's just like black on black. And now he's dressed with a keffiyeh, and he's holding a big rifle, and he's got the bullets across his chest. And people are shocked. And Rabbi Kook then explains that the dress is superficial, that there are pioneers that are acting to protect Jewish people that could easily wear the clothes of a rabbi. And there are rabbis that could easily wear the clothes of a shomer, of a guard. We have to join together in our common dedication to the welfare of the Renaissance of the Jewish people in its ancestral homeland. And then Rav Kook says, "Let us continue with dancing." And they begin to dance again with ecstatic fervor. We have reports, eyewitness reports that people wrote after this incredible event. We have several different people who were there who left like diaries describing what this was like. It was a mind-blowing, almost psychedelic experience of this rabbi dressed as a shomer, as this pioneering guard, and the pioneers and the rabbis dancing together in this ecstatic, full-bodied, fully emotionally engaged dance. And it went on for hours. And then Rabbi Kook raised his hand. He was very charismatic. I really want to meet him. It's not going to be in this lifetime. And the dancing stops, and Rabbi Kook says, "What's the power of the dancing that we're doing?" One of the great Hasidic masters, this is Rabbi Kook speaking, Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, he taught us that the power of dance is that when we dance, we have to jump up. And when we jump up, we're seeing the world from a different angle because we're up in the air. It's a different angle, a different viewpoint to see reality. That's the power of dance, to break out of our old, stale, stereotype, judgmental assumptions about reality, the lenses that distort reality and bring misery and divisiveness to the Jewish people, to be able to jump up and view reality from a different angle. And that's the key to bringing redemption to the Jewish nation through dance. To be able to see the world from a different vantage point, fresh vantage point, through fresh lenses. And then Rabbi Kook said, let's resume dancing. They continued dancing throughout the night. Rabbi Kook, at the end of the night, he collapsed. He had to be helped up to a chair. And he said the bracha, he said the blessing of Shechianu. Blessed be you, God, King of the universe, who has allowed us to live to this moment. That's an amazing story. That's Rav Kook. Okay. So that's this journey that he took that's very famous in Israeli history. It's called
Could you move the picture down so I could see the one with the rifles? Because I only see.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So this is not. Yeah, I don't have with rifles. This is just. They're like actually, spades, and I didn't have one with the rifle. It's easy to get, by the way. If you just look up like, pioneering guard, you'll see a picture of what they used to dress like. Okay, but these are the pioneers in there, and these are the rabbis together, right, in this trip. So it's called it's called Masa, a trip of the agricultural settlements. It's like famous, and there's been a lot written about it, and something that kids learn in school about. So it's very famous, and it's so illustrative of the uniqueness of Rav Kook. And what's particularly interesting for me is the fact that it's called Masa. Masa is a journey. He took these other rabbis on a journey from the area that's around Yaffo, up around the coastline, up into the Galilee. Okay. So we're going to talk about journey today. Now, we're going to do something that if you're not used to it, it's going to be strange. And as a matter of fact, sometimes if you're used to it, it doesn't seem strange. That's a problem. It's a shame when you become so accustomed to something, you don't notice that it's strange anymore. So I'll tell you a story. This is not in my plan of what to share with you, but it's a good anecdote. So when I was in rabbinical school, I was at Yeshiva University, so I also was in a program getting a master's degree in Jewish studies. Yeshiva University has a yeshiva and a university, and they're totally separate. Okay, so I was in the yeshiva to become a rabbi, and I was in the university getting a graduate degree in Jewish studies. So I took an academic Talmud class. So that's not the same thing as studying Talmud in a yeshiva. It's a completely different approach. The teacher of that class was an old man at the time. He's not around anymore. He had come from Vilna. He was the real deal. And he became a academic scholar. He had been a Rosh Yeshiva in Vilna, and he then went into academia. He was not well loved by certain people because of that. And there were women in it was co-ed. She was not co-ed, right? But this was an academic institution, the Bernard Revel Graduate School of Jewish Studies. It's part of Yeshiva University. Now, all the guys that were in the class had learned in yeshiva for many years. Talmud. The women didn't have such a strong background in Talmud. So one time, a certain woman raised her hand, asked a question. And so Professor Feldblum, Rabbi Professor Feldblum, he said, wow, that's an amazing question. Really interesting. And then he said the following: it strikes me as interesting that a woman asked that question. There's two possible explanations. It could be because she simply is not used to the Talmudic style of discourse, and so she saw something that looked strange because she's not used to it. Or it could be because all the males in this room have studied so much Talmud that they become insensitive to that which is actually weird and they no longer notice that it's weird. So I think that's an interesting thing, that we should maintain our ability to notice when something is weird and don't get used to it. Now, that's a lengthy introduction to a brief discussion of the methodology of Midrash. Midrash is a teaching associated with a verse in the Bible. And it always is playing on some type of peculiarity in the verse. It may be a grammatical peculiarity. It may be a conceptual peculiarity. And the teaching latches on to this peculiarity and then generates some type of lesson to be learned from it. And it often is a rather strange lesson and a little bit hard to see how it's connected to the verse. And sometimes the lesson itself may sound rather strange. But the great Maimonides, the great Rambam, he felt very strongly, and this is something that people have been students of mine or friends of mine and students of mine for a long time, and I see the Smiths here that are actually related. So the Rambam says there are three types of people when it comes to these midrashim. They're the idiots, they're the evil ones, and then there's us. So the idiots take everything totally literally. They don't think about it. They just say, oh, yeah, Abraham was thrown into a burning furnace, even though it doesn't say that in the Torah. And wow, he must have had on asbestos outfit. That's pretty cool. He didn't get burned up. Cool. Wow, it was a miracle. Okay. So that's the idiots. They just take everything at face value and they just move on. Then there are the evil people. The evil people look at the Midrash and say, this is absurd. They take it literally, just like the idiots, but then they use that assumption that it's meant to be taken literally to then discredit traditional Judaism. Look at these ridiculous teachings of those Talmudic rabbis. Absurd. Okay, so that's the evil ones. And then there's the third category, that's us, the truly enlightened ones. And the truly enlightened ones know that these midrashim are meant to convey a truth. You have to think about them. What is the truth? Not the literal meaning, but some type of conceptual meaning that is being conveyed through this teaching, this midrash. But it takes effort. We're going to see an unbelievable example of this right now. We're going to look at a midrash. It's crazy. It makes no sense whatsoever. So the idiots will say, oh, it happened like that. The evil people say, look at this ridiculous teaching. These rabbis obviously were drinking too much before they taught this, or smoking something and came up with this crazy idea. It's absurd. But the wise among us know that there's a deep teaching here. And Rav Kook is going to be the lenses through which we're going to discover the wise teaching embedded in this midrash. Okay. It's based upon two successive verses in the creation story. Now, we're going to do a little challenge here. We're going to read two verses. We'll do it in English. And let's see if you can notice that there's something strange. Remember, I said midrashim were always based upon a peculiarity in a verse. So, first verse in the creation story. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit. By the way, can everybody see this, the text on the screen share? It's big enough?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, everybody got that? So God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit. Next verse is, the earth complying with God's request. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and the tree yielding fruit. That's it. Did anybody notice? You may have even seen this before in your storied careers as Talmudic scholars. Do you notice anything strange about those two verses? There's something inconsistent. Anybody like to just, this is your moment of glory. Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us what's strange about those two verses.
One says fruit tree and one says tree.
100% right. That's Mrs. Smith over there. She's a relative by marriage. And she's a genius. And she's also very charming. Now, right? God said that the earth's supposed to bring forth the fruit tree yielding fruit. And what did the earth do? It brought forth the tree yielding fruit. The word fruit tree, the word fruit is missing in what the earth did. That's the peculiarity, that the earth didn't follow exactly the orders that God gave it. Got it? Okay. Now, let's look at a midrash. So I'm just going to quote the midrash based upon the way Rashi formulates it, because Rashi's a lot more succinct. Rashi's the most famous medieval commentator, and he quotes this midrash, but he quotes it in a very succinct way. He quotes the verse, let the earth bring forth, right, fruit tree yielding fruit. And then Rashi comments, it's really just paraphrasing the midrash, that the taste of the tree should be like the taste of the fruit. See, it's a fruit tree, that the tree itself is fruity, but the earth did not do so, but rather, and the earth brought forth the tree yielding fruit. Not a fruit tree. The tree wasn't fruity. So rather than the tree being fruity, it was just a trunk of a tree. The only thing that's fruity is the fruit. Therefore, when man was cursed because of his iniquity, the earth too was punished for its iniquity and was cursed. God cursed the earth. It wouldn't be fruitful. It'd be hard to produce its produce. And that's a punishment because the earth disobeyed God. Now, if you take this at face value, I didn't know that the earth could disobey God. Like the earth is some kind of like being with free will. And also, the original idea was that the trunk of the tree was supposed to taste good. And instead, the earth produced trees that if you bite into the trunk, you have to go to a dentist on an emergency basis. It is not going to taste good, and you'll probably break your teeth. The only thing that's good is the fruit. What does it mean that originally you're supposed to bite into the trunk and that would taste good? So if I was evil, I would say, this is absurd. If I was an idiot, I would say, that's awesome. And if I was among the wise, I would say, this must be saying something. I don't know what, but I better think about it. It must be saying something symbolic. Now let's dive into Rabbi Kook. So we're going to read his analysis of this, and it's powerful. From the outset of creation, it was fit that the taste of the tree be like the taste of its fruit. He's referring to our midrash. It was supposed to be that the tree itself would be fruity. It would taste yummy. Then the trunk of an apple tree would taste like an apple. The apple would also taste like an apple. Now he deciphers this code. What are we talking about here? The tree itself and the fruit, he says it's symbolic. All means which strengthen a lofty and general spiritual goal were fit to be sensed with a spiritual sense with the same lofty pleasantness with which the imagined goal is felt. So let's just read that again. all means. Now, do you notice how it was very subtle? Do you see I put the word means in bold? Is that showing up? And I put the word goal. Okay. All means which strengthen a lofty and spiritual and general spiritual goal were fit to be sensed with a spiritual sense with the same lofty pleasantness, delicious, with which the imagined goal is felt. Let's see if it's just a sentence. Can anybody decipher what he's saying here? He just explained the midrash.
I wonder if it's that these pioneers, even though their camp
Okay, well, let's not talk about pioneers yet. Right?
Oh,
let's just stick to the midrash. So, right, it's supposed to be that the trunk would taste sweet along with the fruit.
The effort.
So how does he interpret that?
The effort would have the same sense as the result.
They don't call you Greg Smith for nothing. That's 100% correct. Rabbi Kook says that the trunk is the means to produce the fruit. Right? If I'm a farmer and I grow apples, I'm not in love with trees. My goal is to sell apples, but I can't grow apples without the tree. That's a fact. The tree are means to the end. The end is the apple. So Rabbi Kook says that ideal creation should be that the means of the ends would both be sweet. But something happened. The means became bitter, hard. And only the imagined goal, when we think about those apples, that, wow, my mouth is watering for this pink lady apple. But the tree itself, bitter, hard. So now he tries to explain, what does it mean the earth sinned? But the nature of earthiness, the dislocations of life, the fatigue of spirituality, caused that only with regards to the taste of the fruit, of the ultimate goal, of the primary ideal, would there be tasted its pleasantness and its beauty, while the trees which bear the fruit, with all their necessity for the growing of the fruit, became thickened in material and lost their taste. This is the sin of the earth for which it was cursed when man was cursed. What's Rav Kook saying? Rav Kook saying, you need a certain refinement. You need a vibrant spirituality rather than the fatigue of spirituality. Life also has so many dislocations. Life is turbulent. I never noticed. I thought just everything is so calm and serene, like that air raid siren today that we had to go hide underneath the stairwell in our building. That was so calm and serene. Dislocations of life. All of these things, the fact that we're material, the fact that life is chaotic and challenging, the fact that it's so hard to maintain a refined and spiritual vision that sees beneath the surface. So the means are bitter. And the only thing that's sweet is this imagined goal. But the journey to that goal is bitter. Okay, so now let's get real. Oh my gosh. We could get real with something small. We could get real with something big. I'll pick something that none of you have ever experienced. Have you ever tried to, let's say, lose weight or become more physically fit? I know probably none of you have ever had the need to do that. So we imagine ourselves weighing the same as we did when we were 18 years old, being as well built. I actually used to lift weights in high school and run long distances. I think it was a previous lifetime. It's hard to even imagine. And at a certain point, wait a second, I need to take care of myself. Maybe I need to lose some weight. I need to get into better shape. And I'm imagining what it's like to be much thinner, to be much more full of physical strength and vitality. That tastes so good. I just sit there in my lounge chair dreaming about the delicious taste of that apple of my physique. Sorry for mixing these metaphors here. Wow. Only problem is my wife and I are going to Italy. I'm not going to be a vegan in Italy. Who would go to Italy and not eat the food? That's a crime. That's a crime against humanity. Bring it to the Hague. Running. I don't know. I got to talk to my cardiologist first. You know, it could be dangerous. That's the means. The means are bitter. There's no pleasure. But imagining what those means could achieve, that's sweet. But I'm never going to get there because the means are too bitter. Because the nature of earthiness, the dislocations of life, and the fatigue of spirituality. And that's our existence. So I'll tell you just a little anecdote that sort of demonstrates this. This is going to get personal. I once had a job. It wasn't my full-time job. It was once a week in Jerusalem to teach for an hour. My wife had the car, so I had to take the bus from where I live in Gush Etzion. It takes an hour to get there. And then I had to walk from where the bus would let me off to where I would teach. I teach for an hour, walk back to the bus, and another hour getting back to where I live. All that for $25. But I'm not resentful. It's okay. Because I'm so refined spiritually and suffered no dislocations of life, and the nature of earthiness doesn't affect me. So I remember distinctly doing this week after week and starting to think, this is absurd. This is ridiculous. This is unjust. Why am I doing this? As a matter of fact, I stopped doing it. And I was getting angry. I got off the bus, and it's about a 15, 20-minute walk to the place where I was teaching. And I was getting more and more angry and resentful at the injustice of life. And then I said, wow, I'm really punishing myself. This is fantastic. The reality is bad enough. And I'm now adding insult to injury by getting so angry about it. And then I remembered that I'm living in the middle of a miracle of the rebirth of the Jewish people after 2,000 years of exile. And I looked at all the people in the street and I said, this didn't exist 100 years ago. There's a bus passing by with an advertisement for toothpaste on it in Hebrew. An advertisement for toothpaste in Hebrew. Hebrew was not a spoken language 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago. This is unbelievable. I'm walking in the middle of a miracle, a lived experience of a miracle. Wow. And then when I got there, I quit. Now, that's a joke. But the serious point is, I started to taste the sweetness in the journey. That walk. Instead of seeing it just as I got to get there so I can get my $25 after teaching for an hour, it was, wait a second. How about enjoy the journey? Well, look around and appreciate this miracle. To taste the sweetness in the means, not just the sweetness of teaching, which I love. The reason I did it was not for the money, because I love teaching. That's why I did it. These are just little examples.
Did you enjoy the subject you were teaching? What was the subject you were teaching?
Yeah, so it was probably Rabbi Cook, probably.
How
I
old
love
were
it.
the people that were listening?
They were college age. Yeah. So this is such a powerful teaching. So many things in our life are bitter because we don't taste the sweetness of the journey. But now let's go back to Rav Kook. But all defects will ultimately be rectified. Concerning this, we are assured with clarity that the days will come when creation will return to its primal state, and the taste of the tree will be like the taste of the fruit. The earth will return from its sin, and the manner of practical life will no longer cause separation from the pleasantness of the ideal light, which is supported on its way by appropriate means which strengthen it and bring it from the potential to the actual. That we're going to evolve, and we'll develop the ability to sense the sweetness in the journey, to enjoy the journey for its own sake, rather than being solely focused on this future imagined goal, wherein all sweetness lies in our own mind, and to reconfigure the way we experience the now, and to taste the sweetness in the right now, in the present. Teshuvah itself infuses the inner spirit. How does one do that? By teshuvah. Teshuvah doesn't mean, we talked about this the first session, doesn't mean repentance. It means cultivating the godly aspect of ourselves, the refined aspect of ourselves. Teshuvah itself infuses the inner spirit. That inner spirit, that ability to taste the sweetness in the present, which is prior to that sunk in the depths of the void and the opposite of the ideal goal. It provides relief to the spirit of righteousness, which was initially oppressed. It empowers the spirit of the ideal, the goal, to penetrate with its strength to the multitude of means. That the sweetness of the apple flows back into the tree. That the journey becomes sweet in and of itself. There's no more distinction between means and ends. It's all journey, and it's all sweet. In all of the means, there will be tasted the taste of the radiance of the goal. Now, I want to show you how this idea is reflected in therapy. I mean, I don't even know if we have to say anymore. It's powerful already. There's a an approach in therapy that's part of the world of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called ACT, which is an acronym for acceptance and commitment therapy. It's part of the world of cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. And they have an approach. They call it the choice point. So this is an example of a choice point, which was during the COVID crisis, where people are having a lot of stress and anxiety. The particulars are not important for us. So we're experiencing whatever it is in our lives, depression, anxiety, whatever it may be. It's a crisis. How do we deal with that crisis? We deal with it by asking ourselves, not what are my goals in life, but how do I want to be in life? And I want to make that clear, that that's a little bit of a fine distinction. Our values. It doesn't mean I want to win a Nobel Prize and be a billionaire or a multi-billionaire. Billionaire is not so impressive anymore. Multi-billionaire. Have a trophy wife or two, and all 12 above average children. Yeah, no, we're not talking about goals, we're talking about values. How do I want to appear in this existence right now, at every moment? Well, is an example. Maybe someone who lives with kindness, self-care and compassion, both physical and mental, helping others, flexible to what life throws at me. These aren't goals, these are values, how we appear, how we show up at every moment in life. Now we're in a crisis here. We have to make a decision. And our decision is, do we make decisions that move us towards where how we show up in life is an expression of those values, is in harmony with those values? Checking in on friends, working on this blog, or alternate between walking, running, bike ride, whatever. These are all things that are important to me, values. Being helpful to others, always be learning, my physical fitness, etc. Or are we going to solve our problem, in quotes, by engaging in activities which lead me away from my values? Alcohol, watching too much news. Oh boy. This is a big struggle right now. I want to know where the rockets are landing at every moment and what's going with the troops, etc. And you know what it does to me? Makes me miserable. Not someone you want to be around. Checking my phone all the time. Getting caught up in things outside of my control. So this choice point is define what's important to me and live the journey in which every moment I'm expressing those values which are important to me, that I can taste the sweetness in every moment because I'm doing things right now that express who I want to be, not in terms of goal, but values. That when an honest eulogy is said to me after 120, they'll say, yeah, Zeph, he was kind. He was helpful to others. He knew how to be flexible to deal with all the things that life threw at him. Right? It's not important like the fact that I won a Nobel Prize. I don't know if anybody knows that. Well, not yet. And being a multi-billionaire, some things are left discreet. I can't tell these things to everybody. That's not important. What's important is the journey. Because there is no destination. You know what the destination is? The grave. That's when it's over. The only thing that counts is the now, is the sweetness of the now, is that journey. There's another ACT tool. This is a little hard to it's too complicated to go through it, but it's mapping out what life is about. I feel stuck. I know no one's ever felt this way, kind of in a pit there. Little birdie comes and says, it's okay, everybody hurts sometimes, but there's a way out. See, there's a rope. It's the choice point to make decisions which move me either away from living right now, the values that I think are important, or towards. Look at this, the little birdie says. Make a choice. Decide right now to do something, to fill your life with meaningful actions. That's what brings us satisfaction. When we live a life that's in harmony with things that are important to us. And we move on in this journey. There's all kinds of struggles we come against. And another time we could talk about all these different aspects here, different techniques we use to keep us moving, because the only thing that matters is the journey. And we keep moving, and we're always encountering our, see the sign there, towards. That's the only thing that matters. That we keep moving, using these different techniques to help us keep moving, so we won't get stuck. Living a life right now, which reflects our values. Right? Again, towards away. Keep moving. Keep moving. And see this person on the top of the mountain, he didn't arrive. You see this? You keep moving, because life is just the journey. There is no destination. And we try to fill that journey with sweetness. And that sweetness is a function of making decisions which reflect those values which we hold dear, which are sweet to us. And that makes that journey right now sweet. When our eyes are always on the prize, eyes on the prize, then the journey becomes bitter. And the journey can even involve behaviors which betray our values in the service of our goal, supposedly. And we achieve the goal as bitter and resentful and angry people. Multi-billionaires, trophy wives, and above average children, and terribly unhappy. There was no sweetness in the journey, and the goal itself is disappointing. I just want to, in conclusion, I could do this in more detail, but we don't have time. We just read the story of Abraham being told, Lech lecha, march to the land that I'm going to show you. Not very nice, God. I'd like to know the destination. Lech lecha, Eretz Asher Areka, to the land that I'll show you. We're the descendants of Abraham. It's the journey. It's the journey. Take one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. Each step suffused with meaningful action that reflects our values. And that makes life sweet. It can be challenging. It can be hard. but it's sweet because it's meaningful. Every step of that journey. And with that, I bid you adieu. And I look forward to our session next week.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Rabbi Zell.
My pleasure.